All right, so that was actually a pretty good segue from Jay. I think maybe the next one I do on these is going to be about the Git GUI that is part of the IDE. But that's not what I'm talking about today. There are so many things that I love about using the IDE, and specifically I'm talking about IntelliJ IDEA Ultimate. I've been using that for a couple of years. It is the paid version. But I don't think anything I'm going to talk about tonight requires the paid. The community version should do it just fine. Tonight I'm going to talk about debugging because it occurred to me that not everyone does it this way, which absolutely blew my mind. I don't know how you manage. More power to you if you can code without going line by line and seeing exactly what variables are what. You're a better programmer than me. So I'm going to show you some of the techniques or some of the things that you can do within IntelliJ with debugging. So I've got a relatively simple program, or at least a small program anyway. All the defs here are just collapsed. This will calculate average time to reach a state using Markov chains and whatnot. But the code itself is not important. This just is the latest project that I was working on and makes for a good demo. All right, so let me move these videos out of the way. So notice up here, instead of doing the run, I'm going to do the debug, and I've got a break line on the first method that I'm going to call. And so when it comes up, you get this debug window. It shows you the thread, and then you can see all the different levels of the scope as you go throughout the program, and then all the variables will end up over here. And you've got some options. You can just step over an entire line so it doesn't go into the method. You can you can go into only your own code. You can come out of a particular method, go to the cursor and so on. And that's kind of going to be what I'm going to demo. So this first one takes us to this method here, practicing these Markov chains. So I step into it, and then I'm going to go and I'm going to get this labels here. And we notice that off to the right, it tells you exactly now what labels equals. So if this was some type of formula or anything, you would be able to see exactly what the value is right here. And then you also will start to see all your variables line up here in this window. And then you can always go back and you can take a look at the different scopes of what you've got. So the next one here kind of just goes in, and then it picks up some more information. Now, if you notice here, like I would have to loop through every single one of these. Well, I don't really want to do that. This is not where the piece of code that I'm interested in to debug. So I can do a step out, and then that takes me out of the entire function and brings me back. So now when I go to the next line, now I see exactly what that state data is that it got from that function. And then it's also down here. So if we keep going along, so I actually stepped over the big line that I wanted. So I'm actually going to rerun that. Step out of, did it again. I swear I practiced this a bunch of times before we ran it. Okay, stepping into this one, step over the label, and now I'm going to step over that one. We already did that, and now I'm going to step into the state transition matrix. There we go. That's what I wanted. All right, so now I'm in here. I can check, I can see, okay, my states are 10. Now let's say I made a mistake, right? And somewhere I pulled a variable or I did something and it was wrong. And I could just cancel the run. I could go back to the code, fix the code, and then rerun it again. But what if it wasn't a simple program like this and it actually took you 5-10 minutes of interacting before you got to the state? So you could actually just come right in here, and then you can change the values of things mid runtime, and then just keep going, right? Now, I'm not actually going to do that here because that would throw things off. This is, in fact, the right value that I want, but that comes in handy quite a bit. So now here I'm setting up a 10 by 10 zeroed array to come up with these probabilities here. All right. And then now I'm making basically a label matrix. I'm not going to try to explain all the code, but notice here again, I would have to loop through this stuff. I don't want to do that. I can step over it, still does it. So how do I get to the next line? I can just bring my cursor here, and then I can actually do a run to cursor, which is handy. So you can just kind of skip around almost in the code exactly where you want to get to. And then you can see exactly what this is. Anytime you see like view as array down here at the bottom, I can actually click that and it opens up a nice handy matrix where you can see it nice and clean. And if let's say this is too many digits, I don't need to see 5, I can actually change the format right here in my window to look at it however I want to as I continue to step through the code. So now let's say here I am and I'm looping through and my states is 10, right? So if I wanted to keep looping through this thing, again, I would be kind of stuck doing this for a while. So if I want to get on, I could either click down here and click the cursor, or you could actually just click the line number and boom, now it finished all that looping. I didn't have to go one by one and I can keep going. Set some empties here. And now here's an interesting one. Actually, I'm going to delete this. I set that up from before. So it shows you the pointer value, right? But it doesn't show you what this is. So if I try to just keep looping through this code, okay, I know the pointer's 1, but I want to know what this is. Well, if I just hover the mouse over it, I get the state data, okay? If I hover over the length, it just tells me built-in function. That doesn't really help. So you kind of move the mouse around and see you get some different data. If I just happen to go over here, now that tells you 167, that's the length of the state data minus 1. But there's an easier and better way to do it. I can come down here and I can add as an inline watch, and then I can actually set up my own custom view of exactly what I want to see. So I can say I want to know the pointer of, and then I can say length of the state data minus 1. And where's my, okay, I'm missing a, all right. That looks right. There we go. So now every time I loop through this, I'll actually get this 1 of 167. So I can keep going through. And now I'm not trying to figure out or trying to hover over this every time to see what that counter was. All right, now let's say there's something that crashes somewhere along here. Maybe it's towards the end of this, the 167. So it crashes, I'm looking at the data, I think I fixed it, I go back, I change it. Again, I don't want to sit here and have to hit run 167 times. So what I can actually do is put a breakpoint here. And then if you do a right click, you can set conditions on the break. So I can say pointer equals, let's say I want to stop at 165. So now I put that conditional pointer here, I can hit resume and it will run, and notice now I'm at 165 or 167. I didn't have to loop through 100 times, and then I can go and I can watch line by line and see exactly what's happening. So I can see my transition. Okay, I'm going from state 9 to state 9. Don't worry about what all that means, but it helps me debug, especially when you get towards the end of a loop, right? So now I could finish this out. Again, if I wanted to just finish the entire thing, I can come down here, click here, and then I could keep going. Now this is the one, I want to show you this one. So I showed you the probabilities over here. So as we're changing our data, and that should have, I'm looking at probabilities. Okay, state 1 and 0. There, okay, now I see it. So we see up here, so that changed to 0.29. You've got the 0.71. And normally what this does, and of course, you know, it works 10 times when you practice it and then you do it, it shows different, it'll show you the colors. So it'll actually give you like a bright red for the high numbers and then a different color for the lower numbers. All right, so let me try through. Okay, so it's not doing the color coding this time. Not sure why that's not doing it. But you can see this could be very helpful as you're trying to figure out exactly what your formula is and what your math is doing and what the output is and where you might have bugs or maybe some data that your code is handling differently. And so I'm going to jump ahead. It looks like I'm at 10 minutes already. So I did the step over, right? If you don't want to go into a function, you can step in. You can step only into your code. So if you've got multiple functions on a single line and some of it is a Python library and some of it's your own, you don't have to go into the Python library, but you can only go into your own. And then I showed you these. And then let's say you're looking through the code and you've got thousands of lines and you want to figure out where you are, you can just quickly hit a button, brings you right back to the line of the code that you're currently executing. So now from here, I'll step out of these. Actually, I've got a bunch there, so I'm actually gonna come down here. It's because I've still got this on. Then I will step out of this one. And I'm going to step out of this one. Okay, so now I'm back in main. And then this one I just kind of added in to show a feature that wasn't already depicted. So when you get to one of these and you go to step into, it gives you an option since there's 3 functions all embedded on one line. So it asks you, do you want to go into Alpha, Bravo, or Charlie? And I can click on the one that I want. So if I want to skip Charlie and just go into Bravo, I click Bravo and it takes me there. And then I can go from there back. And then it took me to Alpha. So it really gives you a lot of control over quickly getting to the lines that you need to see and really drill down and see what the values are every step of the way. And then when you're ready to continue at a normal pace through the stuff that you know works or that you think works, you can kind of skip over that pretty quickly. And I definitely would not be able to code very well without this technique. If the only thing I could do is hit run and then look for an error message or an output that doesn't match what I expected and had to go search for it through 100 lines, that would be very difficult for me. So hopefully there's someone out there that didn't know about this, and maybe this will help you. And that's all I got.
Questions before we move on?
Christopher, when you were at the line with where you set the pointer and the length to sort of set a custom watch, I guess.
Yep.
There's no way to sort of right click on one of the line numbers and say, just watch what's here. You have to actually code a pointer or a watch?
If you want to change the value that shows up next to the line, like if it's not just the value of a variable, but you want to add some more complexity to it, you could put in formulas and custom strings and stuff like that. And then if you're trying to stop a loop when a certain condition exists, then yes, you would right click on that particular part of, so in the loop, right? I could right click and then I can do a condition, and you can type in any conditional statement you want.
Okay, yeah, I did see some of these as you hovered over various lines. Over on the right, there's a little ghost of a value. That's a pointer? Yep. Or, yeah, okay, that's something you coded?
No. So this part is, so these are just automatic.
Yeah, what are those?
Yeah. So this great. So it just tells you the value of stuff, any variables that were kind of set at that line, right? So I've got the state change in the state transitions. So every time you loop through this, this will change.
Ah,
So that does it by itself. I didn't have to code that. I didn't have to tell it to do that. But let's say there was something else. Maybe the state transitions or there's another variable changing, right? Maybe I want to know what the one before this was or the one
right.
after it was, right? I could come in here, do an inline watch, and then add more information of what I want to see as I
see.
progress through it.
Another tiny quick question. When you said like there's a way to say run it up to here, up to this line,
Yeah.
is there a way to bounce between sort of a last run and the current line? Because what if it was interactive?
Can you
You know what I
rephrase?
mean? You don't want it to start at the beginning always.
Oh, right. Yeah. So I did that, right? So I tried to restart. So basically what you could do is you can either just turn that watch off, or there are like some mute options that you can mute the breakpoints. And then generally what I just do is once I get to a certain part of the code where I'm like, okay, everything's working, down to here, then I just set a new breakpoint. Like I know this loop is good. So if I had a breakpoint there, then I just turn that one off. And now the next time I rerun the code, now I end up right here. So I don't have to go through all the steps beginning.
Okay, cool.
So
that was my question. Thanks.
Absolutely.
I have a question. Are you using the community edition here? Are there any of these things that are not available in the community edition?
So I am using Ultimate, which is the paid subscription one. But as far as I know, everything that I did here is available in the community edition, but I would need someone else to confirm that.
Okay, thanks.
Any last questions before we move on?
Sorry, I was unmuted. I was sniffling. I shared a link to, I believe you're using IntelliJ made by JetBrains in Russia. And they're also the people behind Kotlin, right?
Yes.
And they're also the people behind something called Code With Me, which is a plugin. I was wondering, anybody tried Code With Me, and what is code? I've just heard the name Code With Me, and can explain what that is.
Oh, Code With Me, I guess that's they got the Visual Studio Code that has that shared workspaces. So that's the beta version of that. They're trying to develop something. So it's essentially like Google Docs for code, but you're running like if you want to collaborate with somebody else, like so you can you both like create a shared session, and when you edit your code, then you run it like it's a new editor, like you do it. So it's very similar how you edit like Google Docs, but you can like each of you have their own cursor, and you can just go around the code and
yeah. So it's like pair programming, stream programming.
It's not pair. You can. I know, like I used it a lot. I like with the Visual Studio Code, and you can get like 10 people in there. So it's more than the Pioneer. So I haven't seen the like the JetBrains version, but I guess they trying to like copycat the Microsoft. So they.
Oh yeah.
Because they're going with the second version, that's like they might do a better job.
My first experience was IntelliJ. I worked for Bank of no, I was actually Wells Fargo in Charlotte, and they were like they had a huge Java platform, and it was that group of people were divided into two groups. There were people who used IntelliJ and people who use Eclipse, and
but that was a long time. I mean, nobody uses Eclipse anymore.
Nobody uses Eclipse anymore.
So true.
Yeah, Eclipse is kind of, well, Visual Studio pretty much taking the role of Eclipse for being the most bloated IDE.
I mean, IntelliJ is more bloated, I guess, but.
Is IntelliJ freeware?
There are multiple versions exist. Like.
There is a free version.
There is a free version, yeah. Actually, I have a question for Christopher. So if you code on Python, why don't you like use the PyCharm? Because it's the same IDE, which is more like geared to Python. It just has different settings and.
So the IntelliJ IDEA Ultimate, I mean, it is PyCharm. It's It's
Oh.
identical. It just has everything else as well. So if I want to write Java, I'm still using the
All right.
same editor. If I'm writing Kotlin, it's the same editor. If I'm doing SQL database stuff, same editor.
That makes
So
sense.
Yeah.
I've really fallen in love with it because it's literally the one thing I use for everything.
Oh, okay.
So
That's good.
I get to pick up little new things here and there.
Oh no, PyCharm, they don't. They just configure because I have that subscription like to all the tools, and I usually get the language specific one. But you don't need to learn everything because all your key combination, everything, like all the buttons are there. It's just the default. Like it's mostly default settings, and they have like some specific language specific tools that go there. But
I work with a team of Python developer on a real product. Everybody has their own IDE. One is using Emacs, one is using PyCharm. I'm using VS Code.
I feel that's not uncommon. I think that's really common. Like the days of standardizing on an IDE, I feel are
yeah, it
behind
depends
us.
on the car. I know some companies still do standardize, some don't. Like it's.
Yeah.
Any last thoughts before we move to the next speaker? Well, thanks, Chris.